Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Let's give a big Startup Grind welcome for Dave Goldberg. Here we go.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to SurveyMonkey. It's great to have you all here. This is our first. It's our first event here, so this is pretty
don't
exciting.
ruin it,
Yeah,
right?
No. And we're working. I know it's a little warm in here. We're working on the AC. We got. It's a beta space. We're working on these things. So.
It's great. So you tell us about being in. You're right in the heart of Palo Alto. Why here? The company was founded in Washington, if I have that right.
It was founded in Wisconsin originally, but it was in Portland about 6 years ago when Ryan, the founder, decided to bring in investors, and that's about 5.5 years ago when I joined. So we've been down here. I started officially April of 2009, and it was just me and one other person down here. So everybody in this building has joined in the last 5 years, most people in the last couple of years. We were downtown Palo Alto over on Hamilton and Bryant, and we moved in here about 6 weeks ago. So for those of you that have driven past here before, we were blocking the street for 1.5 years as the building was getting built. So everyone's quite happy that we've moved in.
Tell us about, we'd like to start these off a little bit by just getting to know you a little bit. Tell us about where you grew up. Love to know what your parents did for work. And
we're going back
deep.
there. All right. I grew up in Minneapolis. My parents, my mom still does what she's been doing. She's a nonprofit entrepreneur. She started an organization almost 40 years ago to help parents of kids with disabilities, making sure those kids got the right education in schools.
What is that called?
It's called Pacer Center, and she's built that into a large organization, and she has also the National Anti-Bullying Center that she runs through that as well, because a lot of kids with disabilities were the kids getting bullied. So she does that, and my father was a law professor. He passed away, but taught law. So I grew up with that. I have a younger brother who lives in LA who's also an entrepreneur. And I was not one of those people growing up who had the lemonade stand and I was always going to start my own business. My parents, we had some money. We weren't poor, but we didn't have a lot of discretionary income. So anything I wanted to do, I had to figure out a way to get money. So that I did a lot of sort of jobs. I had all sorts of jobs. I had sales jobs. Actually, one of the things I talk about is that people who want to be entrepreneurs, they ask me what kind of training they should get, and besides learning to code, which unfortunately I never really learned. The other thing that I think is really important is learning how to do sales. I sold clothes. I sold stereos at Best Buy when there was 4 Best Buy stores. Best Buy started in Minneapolis. I sold stereos on commission. You don't sell, you don't eat. I mean, it's kind of they don't do commission anymore at Best Buy, but the service was really good when it was on commission because, you had to sell. So, but all that stuff was good learning experience. It's probably, I think as an entrepreneur, what you do more than anything else is sell. No one tells you that. You got to sell employees, investors, customers, journalists, vendors, landlords. Everybody needs to get convinced that you can sort of, you're in your vision, and then you've got to buy into it. So you got to be good at sales.
How have you developed that skill over time? You've gotten much better at it, I presume, over the years. But what are the key pieces to selling employees or to selling customers or?
I think everyone's got different styles, and different ways they're good at it. Some people are in the kind of volume game with sales. I'm just going to hit 100 things, and 99 will be no, but 1 will be yes. And that's not me. I don't like that. I really don't like the no part that much. So I'm trying to be more targeted. So I probably try to narrow things down. And then I think a big part of it is you have to believe in what you're selling. I think it's very hard to sell somebody on something you don't believe in. And so for me, my first company I really believed in, this company really believed in. I had a bunch of opportunities before I did SurveyMonkey to do some other things, and I thought through to myself, how am I going to sell this company to all those constituents, and I had a hard time with it. And so I didn't do those. And that was kind of the thought process that went through my head. With SurveyMonkey, it was really easy. I mean, I think what we do is we help people make better decisions with data. People love this product. It's not a hard sell. And we have kind of a vision of where we want to take it that I think is pretty cool. And so that became, with my first company, we wanted to change the way people listen to music. And that was our mission. And so I need that mission. I need to be able to give it to other people, and I need to believe in it.
Let's start there. Tell us about Launch Media. Tell us about what was that initial problem that you were trying to solve?
So and by the way, how you end up in these things is sort of accidental. So I never was one of those people, I'm going to work in the music business. I worked at Bain as a consultant out of college, and then one of my friends told me about a job at Capitol Records in LA, and so I didn't go to law school. I went to go work at Capitol Records, and I got to learn the music business inside out, and saw a lot of opportunity there. And so when I was at Capitol, what I saw, and this is a long time ago because I'm old, but 20 years ago, I saw that radio and MTV, which were the primary ways people learned about and discovered music, were kind of breaking down. That there was a lot of great music that people never heard. In the kind of music I like, I kind of thought I knew everything until I went to go work inside a record label. And then I learned, wow, my God, there's all this great music I love. And I would never have learned about it except for the fact that I work here and someone gave it to me.
Yeah.
And so there was something broken. There was all this great music being created and no way for people to learn about it and discover it. And radio playlists were shrinking. MTV was already starting back then to move away from playing music videos to doing TV shows. And you could see that there was this constriction of that promotional and discovery part of the music business. And at the same time, the computer was coming along and all of a sudden had been added audio-visual capabilities. And so the aha moment was, hey, we can use the computer to help people learn about and discover music, and we could make it ad-supported. And everybody loves music, but nobody loves anybody else's. And so the personalization part of it is really important. To have the control to listen to the things you want to hear and not have to listen to things you don't want to hear, that was kind of the differentiator.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to a lot of things that exist today, only that was literally 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You had figured this out.
Well,
this insight.
We were guilty maybe being of too early. And I think that's not something someone tells you, it's always, you don't want to be too late, but we were a little early. Online was not what we think of today as the internet. Online was AOL, CompuServe, and Prodigy. And it was over if you were lucky, a 14.4 modem. So there wasn't a lot of music streaming and delivery and all those things. And so we started, the business plan said we're going to deliver it to people's computers however we can. But we didn't actually know how we were going to do it in the beginning. And in fact, we weren't sure if the first video game players had come out, Sega CD and 3DO. Anyone remember
sure,
those?
Trip
Yeah,
Hawkins,
yeah, exactly. So yeah, you have the game background. And they had disc-based, those were the first disc-based video games. And so you could put real music on them. And so one of the things I had done when I was at Capitol, because I was in charge of kind of business development, was I had licensed our real music to a video game company, to Virgin Games, for Sega CD. And so I knew you could put real music on these Sega CDs, so I thought, well, maybe that'll be a way we kind of give people this thing. It turned out to be too hard and too expensive on game platforms, but we started with CD-ROM, because that was sort of broadband on a disc, and we could deliver it, and the cost was pretty low, and so we started putting out a monthly CD-ROM, and that's what Launch was in the beginning, and had interviews with bands and live performances and music reviews where you could listen to the music, and it had advertising. And in fact, most of the articles were written about us when we launched was about the advertising, because no one had seen ads on a computer before 1994. I mean, we were doing ads on the computer before the banner ad was invented. So that, again, I'm old.
Well, and I read somewhere that when you spoke with venture capitalists, that you got comments like, no one will ever watch ads on a computer, which I personally watched like 15 on YouTube today. And the other one was, no one will ever listen to music on a computer. And these are, you've never said who they are. You're welcome to today if you like. Say who.
No, we're
who
being
made
recorded. I will
these
leave
bold,
those people nameless.
These bold predictions. But it's a very interesting case for a lot of entrepreneurs who are saying, I'm trying to invent the future. I'm trying to create something that doesn't exist. And I'm constantly being told by very smart people that this is crazy. There's no market for this at all.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's this weird thing because you, on the one hand, need to kind of, when you're sort of starting a business, you need to get feedback from people. And so we got a lot of feedback from people. And I started with my best friend from high school. And we quit our jobs and we raised $100,000 from friends and family. Because those are the only people who are going to invest in your business plan when you've never done anything before and you're 26 years old. And we would kind of convince them of the idea, and then as soon as they said yes, we tried to talk them out of it. You're like, you're never going to see this money again. But you need this feedback, and these VCs that they thought, hey, this is not really gonna work, and they were trying to be helpful. And so it's, how do you sort out the help, but that's wrong from the help that's right? And it is hard. But I think we had enough conviction in things we believed that were right. And we by the time we got told that by the VCs, we actually had a working prototype, and we showed it to people. And the people who really didn't get it were people who were kind of a certain age that they had a hard time imagining the computer as anything but a work tool. And so it was really bifurcated. And oftentimes what would happen, we'd go and meet with the junior people at a venture firm, and they would be all over it. And then the senior person would be like, no one will use a PC for anything like this. And so that was kind of, we got comfortable with the fact that that we were on the right side of that technology shift.
How does a startup know when they have a real monetizable pain? I mean, when do you hit that threshold of, I think this is a great idea, to there's actually a market, there's something real here? How do you figure that out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, and I think it's different for every business. But I think when you get people telling you, that it's really significantly changed their behavior in a permanent way. When customers say to you, I can't go back to what I was doing, that this has changed my behavior. If you think about, for you guys, like things that you love, that you started using the first time, that are, applications or things on the web or services, and when you say, once I use this, I can't go back. Once I used Uber, I can't go back to calling cabs. Once I used Dropbox, I can't go back to storing my files that way. Like something that's good enough to sort of open people's eyes to the behavior they had before, and this changed behavior, and that it's repeatable, that they like it enough that they're not going to go back.
Why should entrepreneurs focus on identifying customers and finding a customer before, say, just going out and saying, I'm just going to build this product? Talk to us about, you see a lot of companies here at SurveyMonkey.
Yeah.
What is it with finding the customer first versus just going and building what you think?
I think very rarely are you the customer when you're building something. Despite all the apocryphal stories of how businesses get started, someone got hit in the head and had this brilliant idea or whatever, oftentimes we are not the customer, and the customer tells you a lot of really important things. And so, again, to finding something that's going to sort of, any kind of startup is a change in some significant behavior, and it's really hard to get over that behavior change. That thing that I just described is that behavior change, and there's a very high bar to get over that. And so you're not likely to be able to create something that just gets over that bar. I mean, maybe Steve Jobs did with the first Apple computer, but he didn't really do it after that. After that, he had a lot of feedback. But very few people can just de novo come up with a great idea that's going to work. And so I think you need to involve the customer, but it doesn't mean the customer gets exactly what they tell you, because actually customers have a hard time imagining things. So you have to, it's an iterative process. And this is how we build products at SurveyMonkey. I think it's how every good internet company should build products. You got to have the concept, which is the startup idea, and show it to a customer and get their feedback, and the stuff you kind of missed on that you knew about, you've got, and the stuff, it's the insights the customer gives you that you you didn't think about, you didn't realize, those are things you have to sort through and say, well, do I build that for that customer, or no, that customer's an anomaly and an outlier. And so you have to sort through all those things, but I'm really against people. I'm against stealth companies in general. Some of you may have stealth companies.
Tell us why.
Sorry. I just don't think there's any idea that's so unique and so original. Everything is derivative, and it's really about execution of that idea. You know, and every great company out there that I think about, that we all admire and think of today, none of them invented the idea that they made successful. Apple did not come up with computers, digital music players, smartphones, any of those things. Google did not invent search, despite what you might ask kids today. There's so they built the better products, but it's not the idea that matters. It's how you build the product around that idea. And so I think if you keep something stealth, you never get that feedback and you never learn about things. And I think the number of stealth companies that have been hugely successful is very few. And most of the companies, I mean, you look at companies like Dropbox or Airbnb that were done at Y Combinator, like there was a lot of exposure to a lot of people who gave them a lot of feedback along the way and through that process. They weren't stealth at all. They presented it.
And it was very iterative too, right?
Yeah.
They didn't say, "Oh, we're going to do Airbnb."
So
It was
I think the
something else.
notion of stealth, if people like, I don't know if anyone's done any studying on this, but I can't think of too many companies that were stealth for long enough to actually launch a product that worked, that anybody thought was good. And for those of you that watch Silicon Valley on HBO, I mean, their stealth project didn't go. It hasn't gone so well either. But
You've just I haven't gotten to the end of the season.
so
you just
I didn't give anything away. But.
So you build this company, you get 6 million customers, and you take the company public in 1999. In 2001, you get acquired by Yahoo, and you go to run this division at Yahoo. You kind of at your core are a music guy, and talk about that decision of why you went to Yahoo, what that did. How that changed what you're doing. You already had lots of traction. It was a very difficult time.
It's a great question. I mean, look, my mission was to change the way people wanted to learn about music, and I wanted to do that whatever way possible. My mission was never to start a company that went public. My mission was never to sell my company. That was not the mission. The mission was to be successful in building and changing the way people learned about music. And so we never had any preconceived notions that we had to do it by ourselves. And I also kind of realized in sort of 2000, 2001 that it was really tough being a standalone public internet media company. And so we spent a year actually trying to sell the company before we actually did. And it was just very hard. There was lots of interest, but stock prices were all going down across the board. I think our stock price from the first time we talked to Yahoo until we sold had gone down 91%, and theirs had gone down 93%.
Wow.
And so, it was not a good time. And so,
in the press release, I read it today.
Yeah.
When they announced that they were going to acquire you, your stock went from 32 cents to 90 cents.
Exactly.
And it just is such a.
And we got sued by the record labels, which this is not in that you can't see in the press release. We got sued by the record labels because they want us to pay them more for their internet radio service that we had a license for. So we weren't doing anything illegal, but they just were price fixing. Sorry, that's on camera, but I'd say that publicly. But we got sued the day the bids were due. So we had 3 bids, and 2 of the bidders dropped out, and obviously our stock price fell when we got sued. And so Yahoo was the only one around, but Yahoo was, frankly, where we were most excited to go, so it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
I think the other bidders would have paid more had we not gotten sued, so it wasn't good to get sued. We did eventually win the lawsuit 6 years later, but 6 years and a lot of money later. So, but for me, selling to Yahoo...
It's Yahoo's money. It's not
selling to Yahoo was really about having a chance to continue building that vision and taking my team with me. We had built what we thought was the right answer. It needed some more time, and we needed more capital to build it, and it did work out. We were streaming music videos online, starting in 1998, and but there wasn't a lot of broadband. It was hard. The quality was bad, but we'd built up a pretty decent audience. And but a year, I think we were doing kind of 15 million music videos a month when Yahoo bought us, and a year later we were doing over 100 million a month.
Wow.
And that was a combination of broadband taking off and Yahoo's traffic being pointed at it. And we eventually, built up a very big business and a very big site. So some of it was time, some of it was broadband, and some of it was Yahoo's traffic. And the fact that a lot of our competitors went away.
It's an interesting insight that your desire was purely based on the pain point versus like, hey, I want to start a startup and I want to IPO and I want to do all these things. But it was around, how do I solve this in the best, most efficient way possible? Yahoo provided that for you, and actually they did. It was one of the few cases where an acquisition works very, very well.
And Yahoo had done a lot of acquisitions. Not all of them had worked that well, but Yahoo had done a lot of acquisitions. And when we were acquired right after Terry Semel had become CEO. The acquisition stuff happened before Terry joined, but it happened. He signed off on it at the final moment. And they had a real recognition that some of the acquisitions had gone badly in the past, and so they really put a lot of effort into making ours work well. And so that was a real bonus. I should back up for a second. I should say I started the company mostly because I wanted to try running something, and I was 26 years old, and no one was going to let me run anything. And I thought, oh my God, if I have to stay at a record label for the next 15 years in order to try running a record label, I'll go insane. And so that was kind of my motivation. So I thought about starting a company 6 months before I actually did it. I read a couple books. I read Bill Gates' biography called Hard Drive, which was kind of inspirational. And then I read a book called The Republic of Tea, which some of you may have seen the tea around. It's actually a great story. I didn't really know how the mechanics of a startup works. And this is a pretty funny book. Like, these guys actually took their faxes, not emails, faxes that they sent back and forth to each other as they were designing the business, and they turned it into a book. And they used that money to fund the startup or the business. And it's still a successful business today. In fact, they sell it at University Cafe. And but that was also a really helpful. Like, I didn't know anyone who'd ever started a company. I was in LA, but even up here, it isn't like it is today. There was no startup grind. There was no startup community in any way. So
I'm sure you would have attended.
I would have. I went to some things in LA, but it was really more people who were hoping to be entrepreneurs. There weren't people actually doing it, so it was hard to find mentors.
Talk to us about what happened when you left Yahoo and how you came to find out about SurveyMonkey and to get involved with that.
So I left. Actually, I stayed to sort of win this lawsuit. So I left in May of 2007, although I had decided I was leaving a few months before. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd been living in LA. And then I moved up here about 2003. My wife and I got engaged, and I lost the coin flip as to where we were going to live. And so I commuted for 4 years to LA for work. And so I knew I needed to be up here, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I felt like I didn't want to do online music. I'd sort of been doing that for a long time, and I thought we'd been really successful at it, and I certainly didn't want to start over again. But I didn't know what it was. So I went to Benchmark Capital as an entrepreneur in residence, which is a fancy title for figuring out what you want to do next. It's pretty cushy. I have to say it was a great experience. I really learned a lot there. One of the best parts of it, frankly, which I hadn't really thought about, was I got to sit in the presentations when entrepreneurs would come in and pitch, both to a partner but also to the whole partner group. And I always loved all the presentations I saw. I was like, wow, I'd give them money. Which is why I'm not a VC, I guess. I like entrepreneurs too much, probably. But it was fascinating was talking with the partners after the meeting about what they saw, because what they saw was totally different than what I was focused on, the product and the business model, and they were really focused on the team. And the team, the stuff that not people said about the team, but the stuff they observed about the team. It was much more observational than it was sort of factual data points that people presented. And I think people lose sight of that when they're presenting to VCs. They think it's all about getting through the slides, getting all that information across. And
They're reading body language. They're reading the interactions between the
yeah,
founders.
they're reading, and I think, good VCs look at three things. They look at market opportunity, they look at product fit for that market opportunity, and they look at team. And you can't get all three to be, the top. So you kind of have to optimize. And I think a lot of times, at least at Benchmark, I saw them optimizing for kind of market opportunity and team. It's like if you had a great team and you had a big market opportunity that could be changed, and you didn't quite have the right product, but you had the team, you could kind of get to the right product. I think, other firms may think about it differently, but I thought that was a pretty interesting approach, and I think has been really successful for them.
And so did SurveyMonkey pitch to Benchmark?
Oh, yeah, so how did I get SurveyMonkey? Sorry. So I looked at a lot of different things, and I went to Benchmark with the idea that I was either going to start my own thing, or I was going to go do something kind of later stage. I really didn't want to do, which is typical for EIRs, is to sort of see all the pitches come in, and then the partners would say, well, Dave, you'll go in and join these guys, we'll fund it, and away you go. And I just, having been a founder, I didn't want to be the kind of the hired CEO kind of put in by the VCs. It just, I don't know, just didn't feel, it just wasn't me. So I worked on a couple startup ideas. I actually started one company that's still going in LA that my business partner from Launch is running, called Dashbox. He's now taken a new job, so we've got someone else running it, but he was running it for a while. And then I helped start another company that became called Clicker, that we hired my friend Jim Lanzone to do, to sort of change the way people discovered video online. But neither of those were the right thing for me, both location and timing and a bunch of those things. And then I was on the board of Ancestry.com, which Spectrum Equity, who's here locally, had asked me to join. And we were coming back from board meeting. They said, hey, we're looking at this thing. We'd love to get your ideas on it. And it was SurveyMonkey. And SurveyMonkey is one of these incredible businesses that no one knew about. I knew SurveyMonkey. I'd used it. My teams had used it at Yahoo, but I'd never thought about it as a business. And that was kind of, I think, a lot of people's reaction. And so Spectrum and Bain Capital signed a term sheet in the fall of 2008 to buy control from Ryan and his brother Chris, the founders. And I started working on it with them, and I eventually said I would join as CEO. I invested, and we closed in April of 2009. And I was telling Derek, maybe I should just tell the SurveyMonkey story really briefly. It's not my story, but I think it's informative, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs you think, well, if I could only raise enough money, life would be good. Anyone feel like that out here?
No one will admit to it.
And I get that, and that's the way I was in my first company too. And I had a horrible time raising money, and every time I did it, I was bad at it. But Ryan started SurveyMonkey the typical way, pain point. He was a year out of college. He was working at a little software company in Madison, Wisconsin. Someone said, hey, we need to do a survey of our new software product. This was something sold at retail, which no one remembers anymore. But so he was a developer. He wrote some code. He's like, it's 1999. We should do this online. He wrote some code, and people said, well, that's great. We love this. Let's use this for lots of things, and you should start a company. And so he did. He quit his job and he started a company. What was different about it was he was in Madison. He didn't know anyone who started a company. He didn't know how to go raise money, so he just figured it out. And Ryan's one of the most creative problem solvers I've ever seen. And so he figured out a business model, which today we call freemium, but didn't exist back then, except in games, to sort of have a free version of the product and a paid version. He couldn't do any marketing, so he had to make the product market itself. And so people learn about SurveyMonkey because they take a survey, and then at some point in time they come back and decide they want to create one their own. And he came up with this name, which is kind of funny. It makes people laugh. We make fun of ourselves for it. We call ourselves monkeys. We have dev monkeys and legal monkeys, and we're all monkeys here. We had bananas on our desks, and so it's a funny name, but it actually
I
had
saw a huge, giant, Curious George.
Yeah, we got monkeys everywhere around here. They're just, but it actually had a real purpose because the name was memorable. And so when someone took a survey and they saw it in the URL, or they saw it powered by SurveyMonkey, or they saw the thank you page, they remembered the name. And then they might come back 6 months or a year later and think, God, I need to create a survey. What was that thing? Oh, yeah, that funny SurveyMonkey. In fact, one of our top search terms is monkey survey, right? It's just like a monkey in a survey. I don't know which way it was, and so
it was well branded. He maybe didn't plan for it like that, but it was.
But it worked, and so the first 5 years, it was literally just Ryan and his brother. They built a profitable business, and then they needed to hire somebody, and they didn't want to stay in Madison, so they thought it was too expensive to move here, and so they just picked Portland because it was kind of like Madison but warmer. And they picked up and moved to Portland. By the way, I would not recommend doing it the way they did. They literally put a note on the website saying, we'll be down for the weekend while we're moving. Well, wait, it gets worse than that. And they put the servers on a truck, on a FedEx truck, to Portland with no backup.
And they followed the truck the whole way? Or?
No, and then the truck did get lost. And there almost was no SurveyMonkey after 2005, if that truck had just actually lost it. But they did find it. It took them an extra day or so.
Wow.
And they plugged it in, and everything worked, thankfully. So they hired a few people, but the business was already generating a lot of cash by then. And by 2008, it was 12 people, 7 of whom were customer support. 2 developers, Ryan, his brother, and a designer. That was the whole company.
Wow.
Very big company, kind of obviously smaller than we are today, but already far and away the leader in online surveys. Very, very profitable, very high profit margins. We've brought the margins down, but our margins are still we have around 50% EBITDA margins, so they were a lot higher back then.
Who is your average customer? Who is the normal? What is the normal use case for a SurveyMonkey customer?
It's so varied, and that's why the business is so big. I mean, it's everybody. I can come up with a use case for every person to use us for something, but we have, starts in education's about 25% of our business. So that's both K through 12. That's teachers, students, principals. It's in universities. It's students doing research, faculty doing research, class feedback. Nonprofit is another big chunk. About 20% of our business is nonprofits. They really had no way to gather feedback from customers or employees. Government is also pretty big. About 10% is government. And that's both the federal government, which tends to be more internal use, but local governments, you do a lot of surveys of hey, where do you think we should build the rest stop, or should we put a new park in, or those kind of things. And then we have big companies and small companies, but what's true about us is that it's all about gathering data to make a decision, and it's generally has been, up until the last 2 years, from people you already have a relationship with, right? So it's customers, employees, parents, citizens, somebody you already know. You're gathering information from them, gathering feedback, and making a decision.
I mean, you were the music guy, right?
What do I know about surveys?
And and it's music is one of the most exciting verticals that you could possibly pick, and then it's surveys. and this is 2009,
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So, okay, enterprise is sexy today. Working with small businesses is sexy. Having a lot of customers is sexy. I'm not sure it was 5 or 6 years ago.
I got a lot of strange looks from my friends in the music business. They're like, "You're going to do surveys?" I'm like, "Well, I won't have to fight with record labels anymore, so that's a bonus." I think there was a couple things. First of all, I was really drawn to the fact that this was a really great business and a really great brand and customer experience. Customers love this product. Our customer satisfaction scores from our customers are just astronomical. I've never seen anything as good. People just love the product. They get so much value from it.
You don't think you do it on SurveyMonkey though, right? That's how you gather your results.
We do, but
you're sure
they're
it's
pretty
right.
honest with us
Okay.
about things. They tell us the things they want changed too. So, But no, even people who cancel. So these are canceling paid customers. 92% of those people plan to come back in the future. And the only reason they're quitting is because they just don't need to pay us at this moment in time. So, wow. And 93% of them are extremely or very satisfied. These are the people canceling. So there's not too many subscription products that have those kind of metric. It's a good metric. So great brand, great product. For me, also the ability to build a team, but to start with something. So it was kind of this ideal mixture of kind of a late stage business, but a startup team. And we really tried to sort of keep, even though we're now 300 some people, try to keep that startup mentality. And then for me, it was really like a mission I could believe in, that we're helping people make better decisions with data. I think that's really compelling. And when you see all the different use cases that people use SurveyMonkey for, it's awesome. People, fifth graders doing a project to sort of argue for better school lunch choices, right? They initiated themselves. They have the tool. They could survey the whole school and, do that kind of stuff, to, really complex research projects, to, Nate Silver did something today on, should we keep the Oxford comma or not? I mean, so anything you can think of, but it just became something that I felt I could get passionate about. I also liked subscription businesses. We built a subscription business at Yahoo in music, and I thought there's just a lot of great dynamics about sort of consumer-facing subscription businesses, which this is.
I'm guessing the school lunches don't have quite the same customer satisfaction.
No, that was definitely the issue for the fifth graders.
Your customers. I want to talk to you about something that is really unique to you. I've done maybe 75 or 100 of these interviews, and I talked to a bunch of people that knew you before. I talked to one person that's kind of a pseudo competitor with you guys, and I said, tell me something about Dave. And he said, that no one's going to know. And I thought he would, have something, that he could, some sort of insight that I would never read online. And he said, Dave is one of the few entrepreneurs that I have ever met that has figured out how to scale life. And this is a really big idea. And his comment was, it's easy to scale a business, but it's very difficult to scale a business and at the same time scale your personal and your family life and do it in a great way. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about what some of your personal values are and your philosophies on how to scale your own personal life while you're dealing with this incredibly difficult and horrible and all-consuming thing we call a startup.
Yeah. Well, it's very nice of him to say. I'm not sure it's true, but I think, I think a couple things. First of all, in my first startup, I definitely didn't scale life. I worked every single day for the first 2 years. I never took a day off. And then I finally started taking Saturdays off. I didn't take a vacation for the first 4.5 years. I couldn't afford it anyway, but I was broke. But
you're working Christmas. You're working Thanksgiving.
I'm working, yeah. I would go for Thanksgiving dinner and I'd go back to work, kind of thing. Yeah. But that wasn't going to work for me with a family, and my wife has a busy job, and so when I did this, I kind of had this thing like, okay, this is a great business. It works really well with 12 people. We're going to hire a lot more people. I should be able to make this work for me, and I should be able to make it work for them, right? Because this business had gotten to be really big with 12 people, so imagine what it could be with 100. I thought we would probably never need more than 100 people. I guess I was wrong on that. But a couple things. One of the things I did was I decided I was going to leave every day and go home and have dinner with my family at 6 o'clock. And I always felt like I should not be the first person out of the office, but I should be the last person out of the office. And so what that means is, I don't expect my team to be here after 6 either, ever. And there are some people, who will stay later, but in general, there's not a lot of people here after 6 o'clock. That does not mean that work stops at 6 o'clock, but people go home, they do work from home. I get back online sometimes at 8 o'clock. It's not a 9 to 5 job.
Sure.
But I'm home with my family from 6 till 8. My kids go to bed 8 o'clock, and I'll get back online. And weekends are through it for family time. And so, it's a marathon, not a sprint. This is a great business. Obviously, we're in the position of we generate a lot of cash. We've got a almost 15-year-old business. Like, we know a lot about our business, and we want to be really successful. We want to work hard, but we want to be efficient about it. And I find I get just as much, if not more, done than when I was working 100-hour weeks, because I don't waste time. I've got a limited amount of time during the day, and I've got to be really efficient with it.
So if you were going back to the mid-'90s and you're starting launch again, how would your work ethic and the way that you approach these 14-hour days, how would that change? Would you do some version of what you do today, or would you still?
I think I would definitely moderate what I did. I think I got kind of burned out after a while, and I think I wasn't that creative, and I think I wasn't solving problems that well, and so I'm not sure I would need to go to completely like leaving at 6 o'clock, because if you don't have a family and things like that. But I certainly would have worked a lot fewer hours. I would have taken more vacation. I would have taken time off on the weekends. I did notice when I started taking a day off on the weekends, like I was happier,
Yeah.
I was healthier. A lot of things got a lot better, and so. It just seemed very hard to do in the moment, but in retrospect, it would have been better for the business. It would have been better for my team. I think a lot of times my team felt they had to stay late because I was staying late, and I didn't really understand that until much later on. So that burns people out too, not just you. So I think people don't understand the cost sometimes of hours. Particularly now, it was a little bit harder back then. It was a lot harder to work remotely, but today we can work remotely pretty easily, and so we should take advantage of that. So
Let's give Dave a big round of applause. Thank you very much.